Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibuyers, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Thursday, February 19th, and we are on day 19 in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. So I wanted to take some things that came out yesterday as well as this morning and put it all together so we're staying up to date on where the investigation stands. An anonymous donor has given 88 Crime $100,000, which increased their reward to $102,500. You can call 88 Crime or go to 88crime.org to submit an anonymous tip. The FBI is also offering the $100,000 reward, but these two are separate. And rumor control, there was some SWAT activity yesterday in Tucson, but it was not related to Nancy's case. Brian Enton reported that polygraphs have been performed at the Pima County Sheriff's Office. We do not know who took those, and Brian said they were done to clear people in the investigation. The sheriff made a statement after Brian put that out, saying that the polygraphs done yesterday were for new hires, but Brian tweeted out after that the ones he is referring to were not done yesterday. So how does a polygraph work? We've heard about it. We know they're not admissible in court, but let's take a look at the process. It's important to know they're not always 100% accurate, and they can be manipulated by the person taking the test. They start off by attaching a blood pressure cuff, a finger sensor, and then a chest strap sensor. The second step is you are asked very basic questions like, is your name Gigi? Are the lights on in this room? And this sets the baseline stress level for the analyst. And then they get into the tougher questions relevant as to why you're taking this polygraph. The analyzer will look for your body's reaction to the questions like an abnormal spike in your heart rate, your blood pressure, your breathing, and your sweating. There can be false positives and false negatives. Polygraphs don't detect lies. It detects psychological arousal, or in other words, psychological stress. And psychological stress can happen for many reasons, like the person has anxiety. They're in fear of being accused of a crime. It could be a nervous personality affects the test, and even caffeine. Y'all, I would be done. Okay, I would fail outright, even if I were innocent. On the other hand, it is possible for someone who is lying to pass if they are calm, emotionally detached, if they are prepared for the exam, or just not anxious at the time of the test. At the end of the test, the analyzer will compare your body responses to those first neutral questions, the control questions, and then the relevant questions. Moving on, ABC News reported that a law enforcement source confirms to them that the FBI has contacted Mexican law enforcement in connection with the Guthrie case. There is no evidence as of right now she's been taken to Mexico, but this is mainly due to Tucson's close proximity to the border. And for reference, the quickest route from Nancy's home to the border in Mexico is around 75 miles or about an hour and a half drive. A retired FBI agent, Jason Pack, gave an interview to Fox News Digital and said, when any disappearance occurs near the international border, certain federal protocols activate almost automatically, regardless of whether there's confirmed evidence the victim crossed. So I was thinking about this, and we don't know where Nancy is, so it's possible she's in Mexico. If that's the case, one thing to consider is you can go to a pharmacy in Mexico and get pretty much anything over the counter, which could mean if she's in Mexico and she's still alive, there are ways for them to get medications that would be critical for her survival. We know that the family has said she has a certain medication that she takes, and if it's missed, it can cause her death within 24 hours. So just something I was thinking about. Mike Ruiz posted on X that Google data shows someone searched for Nancy Guthrie's address and Savannah's salary before Nancy vanished. It's not clear that the searches are connected to one another or to her suspected abduction. But the timing of the search, January 11th of this year, aligns with that time frame specified in a Ring app post from a neighbor who called on locals to turn in video that evening between 9 and midnight. And he also posted that he's told the January 11th date and specific time frame between 9 p.m. and midnight also surfaced during an FBI canvass of Nancy's neighborhood when agents were asking neighbors for home security video. The Pima County Sheriff's Department said they're seeking video from a wider range of dates from January 1st to February 2nd. Regarding the subject of last Friday's SWAT raid, the one who had the Range Rover towed and they went in the house and brought out 2 people and detained them, he has retained an attorney who put a statement out yesterday. It says, "We can confirm that our client was the subject of 2 search warrants issued and served February 13th. Our client and his mother were both detained by law enforcement while the search warrants were being executed. Neither my client nor his mother were arrested in connection to this case or any other. My client has no link whatsoever to Nancy Guthrie and has no information related to her kidnapping. Like the entire Tucson community, both client and his mother are hopeful that Nancy will be returned to her family unharmed." As far as DNA, they are analyzing biological evidence from Nancy's house, and DNA profiles are currently under lab analysis. I'm very interested in what they found in the home because we know this suspect was in that home for around 41 minutes from the time he was seen on that doorbell camera. You just have to think there was something left behind. Sheriff Nanos gave an interview to the Today Show and said, "We believe we may have some DNA there that may be our suspect, but we won't know until that DNA is separated and sorted out." Retired FBI Special Agent Jason Pack told Fox News Digital that the investigative genetic genealogy testing could take weeks or months, saying it's not a quick database check like CODIS. He says once the DNA profile is built, a genealogist builds a family tree working outward from partial matches in consumer databases like GED Match or Family Tree DNA. And you're essentially reconstructing someone's family history from distant cousins. And then you work your way inward until you can identify a common ancestor, and then you narrow that down to a specific individual, being the suspect. The timeline depends on a few variables, such as the number of relatives who have submitted consumer DNA tests, and also how clean the DNA sample is. Othram, which is the company that found Brian Kohberger, comes into play when CODIS searches are exhausted, and they can get results quickly. The CEO of Othram told the Post that a no-hit in CODIS is exactly what happened in the Brian Kohberger case. He said if there is usable DNA on the glove or other evidence, advanced genome testing can generate a far more detailed profile and identify relatives, even distant ones. He said, "We have worked thousands of cases across the U.S. and internationally where traditional methods failed and they still achieved successful outcomes." So let's go to DNA school for a minute. What is advanced genome testing? And we're going to explain this like we're 12. Your DNA is like a 3 billion letter code in your body. Now, your basic DNA testing only looks at small parts of your DNA. So think of this like you have a book, but you're only reading the chapter titles. Advanced genome testing is like reading almost the entire book letter by letter. And this is how investigative genetic genealogy works. It's typically needed to generate the type of detailed DNA profile used to find the familial relatives in a genealogy database. Moving on, locals in Tucson have spoken out saying that Nancy's disappearance has rattled their tight community. Some locals gathered at a coffee shop that Nancy visited on a regular basis. And one local named Terry said people are worried about their safety. There's a lot of elderly people who live alone in the area. And he said, while a lot of people didn't even lock their doors after this, now they are. The other thing, too, is there was never a community alert issued, which I find baffling. People know about the case, but still, I kind of thought there should have been some kind of we don't know who did this, so just be on the lookout. And yesterday, I learned the Pima County Sheriff's Office is the subject of an A&E docuseries called Desert Law. The description says the show gives elite access to one of the largest sheriff's departments in America. It follows the high-intensity work of patrol deputies, the DUI unit, and night detectives as they police more than 9,000 square miles of rugged terrain in southern Arizona. The first 10 episodes of this docuseries is titled Welcome to Pima County, and that covers a hit-and-run investigation. There are 2 seasons, and seasons 1 and 2 were filmed back to back last year. Sheriff Nanos is not on the show, but did coordinate with the production company. By the way, the investigation into Nancy's disappearance will not be covered on that show. So I wanted to take a moment to talk about Nancy away from the abduction and the news and look into who she is as a person. Sometimes these victims get very lost in the hoopla of everything going on every day. She graduated from the University of Kentucky, where she was a journalism student, and she also served as society editor for the university newspaper. She covered sorority and fraternity life and even wrote a column called Social Whirl. She met her husband, Charles, on a blind date at a sporting event. They were married in 1963 and later moved to Australia for his work as a mining engineer before eventually settling in Arizona. In 1975, they bought a home in the Catalina foothills where Nancy would live for more than 50 years. At church, Nancy led a Bible study class, and attendees said she had a gift for making lessons feel more relevant to everyday life. Friends say she helped shape the lives of many people through her kindness and her steady presence. But there was a tragedy in 1988 when her husband died suddenly. He had previously suffered a heart attack when Savannah was 13. She was 16 when he passed away, and she has talked about that night. She said coming home to find all the lights on and her mother and her sister Annie sitting at the table with their heads bowed, she knew something was wrong. Her mother stood up, gave her a hug, and told her that her father had died. She said that the grief of that has stayed with her, but her faith was strengthened through the loss. She described her dad as a force, a magnetic, joyous, charismatic, and deeply loving person. Later on, Nancy worked at the Daily Territorial, which is a small business-focused newspaper, and that was her stepping stone to a career at the University of Arizona, which is the same university Savannah attended. Nancy retired in 2007, but she did continue serving on the Journalism School's advisory committee for several years. Back in 1980, Nancy moved her mother and her brother, who has Down syndrome, into her guest house. Savannah has spoken fondly about that time, noting that while many families in that era placed children with Down syndrome in institutions, her grandparents chose to instead raise him in a warm, loving home. After Nancy welcomed them into her household, he became a huge source of comfort to the family following her father's death, and he is remembered for his gentle and kind nature. Before Nancy started experiencing her health challenges, she loved hiking, taking spin classes, and playing tennis. But as her health declined, she began using a cane and wearing very powerful hearing aids. She also spent a lot more time at home journaling, reading, and playing Wordle. Even so, friends say she was never a complainer. Her social life has remained very active, and she is a regular at her monthly book club, staying engaged and connected with everybody despite of her health struggles. So I just wanted to give you a little insight into Mrs. Guthrie, aside from the obvious news we're hearing every day. And if you strip away who her daughter is, most importantly, she is a mother and she is a grandmother. So there is a wide net of living victims right now who are facing the unimaginable every single day they wake up. So my thoughts are with the Guthrie family and everybody who knows and loves her. Hopefully we get answers soon, and best case scenario is Mrs. Guthrie is alive and reunited with her family. So that is it for this episode. I'm watching everything. If anything new pops up, I'll do a YouTube short. Make sure you're subscribed and you have notifications enabled. And if something big breaks, I will do a live stream. So that's the plan for today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, and we will see you soon.